Hi there, Alison here with another Cab Franc du jour. Today's wine is taking us to Bourgueil, and we're looking at the Domaine de Bel-Air 2018 Clos Nouveau, Bourgueil. In 1979, at the tender age of 14, Pierre Gauthier, the fourth generation of Domaine de Bel-Air, began working alongside his father André, tending to the family's grapevines planted in the commune of Benay in Bourgueil. Over the last 40 years, Pierre has quietly and humbly built the domaine into what is now one of the most respected and celebrated estates in the appellation. Since 2005, Pierre's son Rodolphe has joined the estate as well, and together they're now organically farming 18 hectares of Cabernet Franc vines planted in the commune of Benay. Pierre and Rodolphe make 5 Cabernet Francs. 2 of these are blends from across multiple parcels, and these include Jour de Soif and Les Vins Lieux-Dits. And they're also making 3 cuvées parcellaires, so single vineyard wines, and these include Les Marceaux as well as Grand Mont and Clos Nouveau. 2 vineyards which are highly regarded as 2 of the top sites in Benay, if not the entire Bourgueil appellation. Now today we are looking, of course, at Clos Nouveau, and this is a very special vineyard. But before I get into the details of this vineyard, I'm going to give a bit of an overview of the Benay commune. Located on the east side of the Changeant River, starting about 5 kilometers north of the Loire River, the commune of Benay is unique in the Bourgueil appellation in that all of the vineyards are located on the côte, or the slopes. So there's no alluvial soils in Benay. Rather, all the vineyards have a stronger impact of the Turonian tuffeau chalk bedrock. The viticultural area in the commune stretches about 2.5 kilometers from north to south and is just a little over 3 kilometers wide from east to west. There's 2 geographical features in the commune that define the exposures of the slopes across Benay. We have the Changeant River to the west, and then we have the Benay Forest to the north. So in the western part of the commune, the slopes have a bit more of a southwest exposure because the vineyards tend to face the Changeant River. And then as we move eastward, the slope actually continues in a bit of an arc shape, following the Benay Forest to the north. And in the center of the commune, the slopes actually have a full southern exposure. And then in the eastern part of the commune, the slopes actually shift ever so slightly and have a slight south-southeast exposure. Now, in terms of the Turonian tuffeau chalk, we find all 3 kinds of tuffeau here. And actually, elevation tells us a little bit about what tuffeau we might find where. So from 30 to 50 meters above sea level, this is where we find the lower Turonian tuffeau chalk. This is an argillaceous chalk. And then from 50 to 70 meters above sea level, we find the middle Turonian white tuffeau chalk, and this is a micaceous chalk. And then above 70 meters at the northern edge of Benay, we find a narrow band of vineyards that are on the upper Turonian yellow tuffeau chalk. In terms of topsoil, we do find quite a bit of variability across the commune, but in general, we will find a slightly higher clay content in the topsoils here, as well as slightly shallower topsoils as well. And because of the commune's position set back from the Loire, as well as the impact of these cooler soils, so with the clay and the tuffeau impact, that means that the vineyards in Benay have a long, gradual, almost slightly cooler growing season. And this allows for the full phenolic maturity of the skins and seeds, which makes the wines from Benay some of the most tannic and structured Cabernet Francs from the Bourgueil appellation. Looking at Clos Nouveau a little bit closer, this is a very special vineyard, and it's located in the heart of the Benay village, and we're about 6 or so kilometers north of the Loire River. And this vineyard is widely regarded as one of the most historic and prized vineyard sites in the Bourgueil appellation. The viticultural history of Clos Nouveau can be traced back to the 13th century, when it was part of the vineyard holdings of the Château de Benay. The clos itself was actually built around 1600 by the Du Bellay family. This is the descendants of the poet Joachim du Bellay. And the clos is fully enclosed by limestone walls that are 3 meters tall. That's nearly 10 feet tall. The clos in its entirety is about 1.3 hectares, but only 1.15 hectares are planted with vines. And in keeping with the tradition of the vineyard and to enhance the natural biodiversity of the site, 15 are planted with a variety of fruit trees that are espalier trained up the walls following the perimeter of the clos. The Clos is situated on a plateau with a full south-facing exposure, and we're at about 60 meters above sea level. In terms of topsoil and the bedrock here, we are dealing with the Middle Turonian tuffeau chalk, and the topsoil is quite shallow, only about 20 to 30 centimeters of a silicious sandy clay topsoil before we hit that tuffeau chalk bedrock. And because of this vineyard's position, again, set back from the Loire, and we have the impact of these stone walls as well, this makes this site a warmer site. So Cabernet Franc will have a long, gradual, slightly warmer growing season here at Clos Nouveau. Now, Pierre shared with me that when he was a boy, he used to walk by the Clos and these 3-meter tall walls every day on his way to school. And when he began his journey as a vigneron, the older vignerons in the region told him that the greatest Cabernet Franc wine was made from the vines enclosed by those very walls. It was always Pierre's dream to one day become the caretaker of this very special vineyard. And in 2005, his dream became a reality when Domaine de Bel-Air successfully purchased Clos Nouveau by candlelight auction, making them the sole owner of this vineyard and only the third owner since 1798. Following the purchase, they did some restoration of the vineyard over a few vintages, and some of the original vines remain that were planted in the early 1900s, but they have done some replantings as well. So the average age of vines is around 40 or so years of age. And as part of this restoration, they also installed century-old schist stakes at the end of each row. And this was a little bit of a nod to the past and to mark the significance of the Angevin wine culture in the region. Now, from a winemaking perspective, the yields for this site are actually pretty consistent from vintage to vintage. So we're talking around 35 or so hectoliters per hectare. In terms of the fruit is hand harvested, it is hand sorted, and it is destemmed. The berries will undergo a cold soak in advance of alcoholic fermentation, which takes place in stainless steel with indigenous yeast, not exceeding a maximum fermentation temperature of around 30 degrees Celsius. The total time on skins is about 20 days, and they'll do some pump overs for the first 15 days, and then some pigeage once a day for the last 5 days. The finished cuvee is actually 95% free-run wine, 5% press wine. And then the élevage is over 24 months in 500-liter oak barrels. 70% of this is new. And then following this, it will go into stainless steel for about 6 months before the wine is then bottled. So let's dive into this wine. So instantly the nose has this beautiful purity, freshness, like perfectly ripe berries from off the bush or the tree. And I'm getting mostly red fruit here. Yeah, like cherry, there's a bit of red plum here. There's maybe a touch of like a wild black raspberry note as well. And then in terms of the pyrazines, I would say they are on equal footing with the fruit. There's a nice balance here. And it's a very classic profile, lots of herbs, like a mix of thyme, rosemary, sage. There's a touch of like a cedar leaf thing going on as well. Some nice florals here too, actually. There's a nice lift and perfume to the wine, nice fragrance to the wine, and the florals come through as almost like early summer flowers, so like lilacs and peonies. Now there's a little bit of an oak presence on the nose, but it's not too overwhelming. I think the fruit comes through really nicely. On the palate, those same fruits come through really nicely. And actually it feels a bit more like fruit juice on the palate. Like there's a juiciness to the fruit profile, like almost reminiscent of like a pomegranate raspberry juice or cran ras juice or something like that. There's a bit more spice on the palate. That's likely a combination of oak spice as well as Cabernet Franc spice melange. But the spice is coming through as almost like Christmas spices. So like cinnamon, a bit of clove here, a bit of nutmeg, a touch of allspice as well. There's a little bit of a nice mineral kind of undertone to the wine, like a slight chalkiness. There's a little bit of that graphite thing happening as well. The acidity is really fresh, very cleansing, very refreshing actually. The tannins are super silky in the mouth, and they have a wonderful uniformity in terms of their overall texture, like a great kind of grid-like pattern, I sometimes say. This wine has sort of a medium body and a really airy, almost angelic-like profile. Like there's a lot of density and concentration here, but it is in a rather light and ethereal frame, which is really cool. You do sense that there's a greater Tuffeau impact here. Like there is this lean, lithe character about this wine. There's a lot of tension here. It sits, vertically or linearly on the palate, as opposed to something that I would describe as more horizontal or round. And I think overall, you do feel a bit of the oak here, but it's by no means overwhelming. And I do think that there is sufficient concentration here for that oak to integrate definitely over time. And this wine has such life in it, and it will probably be, I would say, even better in 10 years' time. And what's remarkable about it is there is a seriousness about the wine, and you feel the structure, you feel that kind of power, the expression that they say, iron fist in a velvet glove. That's kind of what this wine is doing, but at the same time, there's something about it that feels really kind and tender and approachable, and there's an ease about it as well, which is really, really beautiful. And that's really hard to master with Cabernet Franc, is to get that power and that structure, but also this sense of ease and approachability. And I think Pierre has done a fantastic job with this wine. And I had the pleasure to spend a bit of time with Pierre at the Domaine last spring, and it was probably one of the most memorable tastings of that trip, because it was early on in the tasting, or early on in the trip, I should say, and my French had not kicked in yet. So we were dealing with this kind of franglais situation where we were trying hard to communicate with one another. And at the end of the tasting, I was just so taken with the wines, because these are really, his entire range are some of the best Cabernet Francs in the Loire Valley. And after we finished the tasting, he took me to Clos Nouveau, and I just remember like showing up to this giant, Clos, these walls and this giant iron gate. He takes out this big key that's like this big, and he's opening this gate, and we walk through it together. And there's some vineyards that just hit you with magic, with that energy when you walk in. And Clos Nouveau is a special site. This is a special wine, and if you can get your hands on this bottling, I highly recommend it. It is definitely one for the cellar. They make about 5,000 or so bottles per year, so it's not a huge production, so it might be a bit of a tough one to find, but if you do come across it, I highly recommend grabbing a bottle and tucking it in your cellar for a wonderful special occasion, 10, 15 years down the line. So if you have had the wines from Domaine de Bel-Air and you have a favorite, do let me know what you thought of them in the comments below. And of course, as always, I'll be back again soon with another wine. Cheers.